Some summers you never really leave. 1994. I'm a teenager, sprawled out on the floor of my grandmother's creaky old dacha. Wooden walls, mosquitoes, the sort of Soviet TV that only half works and makes everything look haunted. And every single night, all you hear about is one thing. Solzhenitsyn, coming home.
Wait, coming back from where? Just in case anyone missed that bit of history.
From exile, 20 years of it. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Nobel Prize, the Gulag archipelago, kicked out of the Soviet Union back in '74 for blowing the whistle on the whole system. And to grown-ups, to teachers, his name was this: Wait. Not just a writer, the dissident, Russia's conscience. And now, he's coming home.
The whole thing already sounds biblical, doesn't it?
It kind of was. But here's what nobody remembers. He didn't just hop on a flight to Moscow like some rock star. No, he took this epic train journey, 2 months all the way across Russia, east to west, stopping in city after city, shaking hands with governors, chatting to teachers, giving speeches in factories. Every night, the TV would show him stepping off the train with that beard, looking like he'd just walked out of the Old Testament, and then, boom, straight into a lecture on Russia's soul and destiny.
The full Tolstoyan pilgrimage, on prime time.
And at first, people loved it. You could feel the curiosity, even this weird kind of reverence, like history was finally fixing itself. The persecuted prophet returns, vindicated, victorious.
And then, he actually started talking.
And you could feel the mood just shift. Here's my favorite example. Well, favorite in quotes. Republic of Buryatia. Capital, Ulan-Ude. He rolls in. Everyone's pumped. Crowds are out. It's a moment. And then he casually suggests, hey, let's reorganize the whole country into provinces equal in population. Forget about your ethnic identities. They're a Soviet leftover anyway.
Which, if you actually live in Buryatia and aren't Russian, is basically like saying, hey, your whole republic? Might as well not exist.
Exactly. For him, these republics were just a Soviet invention. Time to sweep them away, get rational. But for the people there, it sounded like erasing their whole identity. And they didn't take it quietly. People stood up and told him to his face, if you're so keen to redraw our maps, maybe go back to America and stop telling us how to live.
Ouch. Not quite the hero's welcome he'd pictured, huh?
And that wasn't a one-off. Everywhere he went, he'd hand down these moral verdicts, and reality just wouldn't cooperate. And as a kid, I wasn't thinking about politics. I just felt something was off. Even in my family, which basically lived and breathed politics, Solzhenitsyn felt weirdly out of step. His speeches? Heavy. Long. Like he'd missed the memo that Russia was on fire.
So instead of this heroic dissident, you saw...
An old man, honestly. Stern, stiff, and ready to lecture a country that was, let's be real, done being lectured. He was 75, which today doesn't sound ancient, but in 1994, Russia was sprinting. Politics was a young person's game, and he looked, well, old. There's an expression in Russian, the white coat. It's what you call someone who, instead of engaging, just slips into this moral superiority. Like, I am pure. I am right. You're all just messy.
So less about laundry, more about altitude. Moral altitude.
Exactly. To a lot of people, he came off as that slightly wild grandpa. Shows up in his metaphorical white coat, ready to tell the whole country off. He's standing up there, above the chaos, judging. And, honestly, people found it grating. Self-important. Kind of cold.
But
here's the thing. You look at his life. The camps, exile, years up against the regime. Maybe it wasn't just arrogance. Maybe the white coat was just what's left after you've survived all that. It's not a performance. It's battle scars turned into a uniform.
that's generous.
Somebody has to be.
I'll be less generous. There was something grandiose there. Like, you could tell he really thought the fate of Russia hinged on his every word, delivered in that slow, dramatic, let me set you straight voice.
And on that note, before I start lecturing too, hi, I'm Gregory.
And I'm Dina. Today, the man who came back to Russia in a white coat, full of moral authority, and found out that authority doesn't always mean influence. His book about Russia's collapse? Turns out it only got more relevant, and the state eventually adopted his ideas, though he never fully endorsed that state. The white coat. Who wears it, who inherits it, and what happens when it gets stained?
Here's what gets me. The lukewarm reception didn't faze him. Because in 1995, he gets something wild. His own TV show.
Wait, a whole show?
Pretty much. ORT, the main channel, launches Meetings with Solzhenitsyn. Every 2 weeks, 15 minutes straight into people's living rooms. Not a politician, not a performer, just a writer talking to the country. That's unheard of.
And right from the first episode, April 1995, he throws a curveball, doesn't he?
Completely. Instead of rehashing Soviet crimes, which, let's be honest, is what everyone probably expected, he goes straight for the jugular of post-Soviet Russia. The reforms, the new elites, Western knockoffs, education going downhill, local government falling apart. He's got smoke for everyone.
So basically, relax, I'm here to roast all of you.
The network probably hoped he'd help them bash the communists before the elections. Instead, he comes in swinging at everyone. Reformers, old guard, you name it. He's not telling people what they want to hear. He's telling them what he thinks they have to face.
Which is admirable. And, total ratings poison.
The reaction? Mostly a shrug. Think about it. The country's dealing with inflation, unpaid salaries, crime, the Chechen war. Moral philosophy on TV? That's a tough sell when you haven't seen your paycheck in months.
Thank you for the metaphysical diagnosis, Alexander Isayevich, but my salary hasn't turned up since Christmas.
Exactly. By the end of '95, canceled. Officially, it was all about programming changes before the elections. Unofficially, turns out relentless moral critique is not a TV ratings magnet.
The white coat? Politely folded and shelved by the network execs.
And looking back, those shows say a lot. Not just about Solzhenitsyn, but about Russia in the '90s. A country torn, half still revering its prophets, half rolling their eyes at another old man in a white coat. So, the book. Russia in Collapse. Россия в обвале, if you want to flex your Russian. Published in 1998, and the timing? Almost too perfect. Right before the financial crisis hits.
Seriously, the timing is spooky.
Right? The ruble tanks, people's savings vanish overnight, and suddenly, Solzhenitsyn's warnings aren't just theory. They're the front page. What sounded preachy before? Now it's basically live commentary.
But what even is this book? Is it politics, memoir, journalism?
That's the fun part. It's a total mosaic. He grabs transcripts from his TV rants, essays, speeches, journalism, throws them all together. Not academic, not straight reporting. It's more like, here's everything I've been yelling from the rooftops, but now it's a book. Scattered ideas stitched into a story about a country falling apart.
Style-wise? What's the vibe?
Surprisingly clear. Sharp, vivid, never gets lost in jargon. Even the tough stuff feels direct. You can tell he spent years talking right to the camera. It's not a monograph. It's a sermon. Straight to the country's conscience.
Preaching from inside that white coat.
And, to be fair, he'd earned it. The book's split into 5 big chunks. First, he goes after the '90s reforms. Social, economic, moral carnage. Second, the heartbreak of Russians stranded outside the new borders after '91. Third, federalism, all the arguments about Moscow versus the regions. Fourth, this is where things get spicy. The return of Russian nationalism, and calling out politicians he thinks suffocated it on purpose.
That's the part that makes people squirm.
Because he's not pulling punches. He says Russian identity got stomped on, first by the Soviets, then by the 90s liberals. And then, fifth part, he zooms out. Russian character, spiritual stuff, big philosophical questions.
So, 5 parts. But you said the structure's kind of wonky?
Honestly, yeah. If it were up to me, I'd have gone with 3 parts. Yeltsin era, people's tragedy, then what do we do now? But that mosaic thing, it's not sloppy, it's urgent. He was racing the clock, just throwing it all together because the country was falling apart in real time.
And after this, what did he do next?
He switched gears, dropped politics for history, wrote 200 Years Together about Russian-Jewish relations, hugely controversial, sparked a ton of debate about anti-Semitism versus honest history. But Russia in Collapse? Nothing else like it. It's a snapshot of a country in meltdown, written as it happened.
And it was never translated into English.
Never. Which means if you're not reading Russian, you're missing his full take on the 90s. Scholars abroad get scraps, a few interviews, some essays, but not the whole blueprint.
The white coat, only visible if you read Russian.
All right, let's dig into the big arguments. Solzhenitsyn breaks Russia's collapse into 4 main failures. And sure, looking back, some of this seems obvious. But at the time, these ideas were anything but mainstream. In the 90s, it felt like you only had 2 choices: keep following Yeltsin's Western-style reforms, or throw it all in reverse and bring back the USSR.
No middle lane, just west or backwards.
Exactly. There was some criticism, like the Yabloko party saying, hey, these reforms aren't making us more Western, they're just making things weird. But even they stuck to the Western script. An actual third path, one that could roast both Western liberalism and communism, barely showed up in public debate. Only the odd intellectual on the fringes. So, failure number 1, market reforms. Solzhenitsyn didn't hate the market. He hated how it was done. Shock therapy just meant selling off Russia's best stuff for peanuts. All the oil, all the factories, suddenly in the hands of a tiny group with the right friends. Regular people? Hyperinflation ate their savings. Paychecks went missing. Social safety net? Gone.
So not rebuilding, just running an economic experiment on everyone.
Exactly. It was chaos, totally unmoored from any sense of right and wrong.
What's next? Failure number 2?
Democratic institutions. After the 1993 constitutional crisis, Russia got a super strong president and a parliament that was all bark, no bite. Sure, there were elections, there were parties, but the system was built wrong from the ground up. Deputies represented huge, random districts. Nobody really knew their voters. Instead, they owed everything to party bosses and big money. Parliament could argue, but the real decisions happened somewhere else.
And his fix wasn't less democracy, it was more. But start at the bottom.
Exactly. He wanted real local power. Actual towns and cities running themselves, not just on paper. But all the power stayed at the top. Civic life stayed flimsy. It looked like democracy, but the roots were fake.
Third failure.
Power and elites. In the 90s, politics and big money melted together into one closed club. Oligarchs ran the media, pulled the strings, and corruption wasn't a bug, it was the whole system.
The 96 election is the poster child for this.
Exactly. When it looked like the communists might come back, Zhuganov was Yeltsin's main rival. Big money and big media went into overdrive. TV coverage was all in for Yeltsin, state resources were used freely, and even Yeltsin's serious health scares were hidden. The whole setup wasn't about serving the people. It was about the elites protecting themselves. The state worked for its own continuity, not for society.
And failure number 4?
Foreign policy. Russia after the USSR? No clear plan, no self-respect. Just reacting to the West, letting the IMF and World Bank steer the economy, watching NATO expand. And here's the key. Millions of Russians woke up in other countries overnight, and the state's response was, at best, half-hearted. He saw that as a huge moral failure. But let's park that. We'll come back to it.
So, economy, democracy, elites, foreign policy.